I'm speaking with Polly Samson, who is a writer and a lyricist. And I actually just finished your book, The Kindness.
Oh, great.
And I loved it.
Thank you.
I loved it.
Oh, I'm so pleased.
And I'm glad we were having a discussion earlier off camera, and it came up that it was autobiographical, and I said, I certainly
not
hope
really.
it's not.
No, it really isn't. No, it's inspired by some old family stories. I'm not going to ruin it for anyone else who hasn't read it,
No,
but you know, the sort of central problem is actually something that happened to my great uncle.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Because it's a very emotional
Yeah.
story. But I love the way you told it, because it unraveled. As
Yes.
opposed to starting from the beginning and telling a story, it has already happened, and it's sort of unraveling.
I think that's quite like life, that we live in the present moment, but we're so informed by our memories and also by the way that the present can completely change your memories as you understand far more about things that have happened to you.
Of course.
With the benefit of hindsight. So it's also a novel about hindsight.
Right. So you write novels.
Yeah.
How do you come to write lyrics?
I think I've been writing lyrics longer than I've been published as a novelist and short story writer, because I started in 1993, and it was quite an unwitting start, because probably, I was David's girlfriend, and had he come to me and said, I'd like you to write lyrics for the next Pink Floyd album, I'd have run a mile. But as it happened, I think it's called glandular fever here. I think it's called Epstein-Barr, is it?
Okay.
Which leaves you in bed with fevers of 106. And so he was going and jamming with Rick and Nick in the studio, coming back in the evenings when my temperature was very high, playing me the tracks and saying, I don't know what to do. What should the lyric be? And I'd be lying there with a fever, sort of mumbling things.
Right.
And it took me a while to notice that he was writing them down.
Oh, no.
And then a few paracetamol later, I'd look at what he'd written down, and he'd say, no, I think this works really well. And I'd think, I don't think it does, actually. So I'd then find myself sort of rewriting it. And so that's how it happened. It never happened in a sort of anything other than an organic way.
Right.
And then by the time we got to High Hopes, I'd sort of gathered some speed, and I kind of felt like I knew more about what I was doing.
What do you like doing better?
What, fiction or
writing lyrics?
whichever I'm doing at the time, actually. I mean, I am so immersed when I'm writing a novel. And of course, fiction has to come from, I don't know what it comes from, my soul, my imagination, whatever it is. It has very few prompts, whereas writing a song, it has that wonderful thing of actually having a structure. So I listen to the music, and on the whole, the music comes first. And it's sort of rather wonderful after the sort of free form of fiction. Right. I could send my characters off to the moon, no one's stopping me. But with a lyric, there's a piece of music, and it has to fit that piece of music, and it has to be something that David, the character of David, would be happy singing. So it has similarities with writing fiction, but it's very different.
Has that ever come up? Has it ever he come to you and said, I don't really like
no,
the way
because I think that's I know him so well. I mean, and the marriage, I'm quite a wordy person, and I think the fact that music is his first way of expressing emotion means that even in the marriage, half the time I'm sort of interpreting what he might really mean or what he would say if he were a man of more words. And so it just feels, fairly much like an extension of that.
Is it personal? Lyrics, do they come from your personal life?
Oh, sometimes, yes, yes. I mean, each lyric is different and has different things that have inspired it.
Because Rattle That Lock is was inspired by...
Not inspired, informed by. I knew that I wanted to write a song about the need not to fall into an apathetic or despairing state, which I think, the way that many countries are now, we all feel a bit hopeless. I mean, we have no rights really anymore since Thatcher in this country to protest, for example. And it's something that I feel quite strongly about. So I knew as soon as I heard that piece of music that it would be a great piece of music for expressing that need to not just put up with things, but to go, and even if you can't change anything, that personally you'll feel better if you go and kind of shake your fist, go and rattle that lock, rather than just sort of slump. And so I knew I wanted that to be the subject of the song. And then one day, while I was I'd already got this idea of rattle that lock, lose those chains, and I was walking along and thinking, but what is the rest of it? And I was miles from here where I wrote it, and I suddenly thought, oh, I know. Book 2 of Paradise Lost has that amazing thing where Satan, having been expelled from heaven, goes and challenges God, and on the way gets distracted by Earth hanging on a golden chain. But that is actually heroic. It's written, it's a really heroic story. And so I ran miles back to the house, you know,
Right.
got my Milton
Got it.
and thought, no, that is absolutely it.
Yeah.
That is how I can express this.
Right.
So that was kind of a joy.
So you said the music comes first.
So on the whole, the music comes first.
David comes to you and says, I need lyrics for this song.
He tends to give me sometimes as many as 20 tracks to listen to. And again, walking is very much part of it for me. And I walk miles and miles and miles. And one or two will spark something, and then others won't. And some I may not even like. I mean, that doesn't happen that often, but I just think, no, that one doesn't work for me. You know, that's not a piece of music I want to live with for sometimes the lyric takes a very, very long time.
Right.
And so I will select from the tracks that he gives me and then progress with one at a time.
Because the Girl in the Yellow Dress,
Yeah.
you wrote the lyrics for that one.
Yeah.
And it's got a very jazzy
Yeah.
blues. So
Yeah.
where does the story come?
Oh, well, that's an interesting one, actually, because I wrote a different lyric for that, for the last album, for On an Island.
Okay.
And I think it's the only lyric I've written that David has outright rejected.
Oh, really?
And it was because it was, so obviously set in a jazz club.
Yes.
And I'd written a lyric, which was, you asked about my own experience.
Yeah.
Well, when I was 19, I had a sort of musical crush on this very ancient saxophone player in a jazz club in London. And I used to go, I didn't know anyone in London, I just moved to London. And I'd sort of sit with my pint of beer and just stare at this very old man playing the sax. I sort of really freaked him out.
Right.
And it always stayed with me. There was
Right.
just something about his playing that just hit me straight in the heart.
Yeah.
And so I tried to write I did write a song about that feeling, and David took one look and said, well, I'm not singing that, about some man you had a crush on when you were 19. And I was sort of quite hurt for a little while and then put it to a side. And then, years later, Phil Manzanera, because that piece of music, I've always loved it. And Phil Manzanera said, you know what this song's about. It's about a beautiful, sexy woman. And I thought, well, great, I'm going to write a song about myself, am I? How does this work out?
Yes.
And then I sort of thought, and I'm going to write a song for David to sing about a different beautiful, sexy woman. Well, that isn't going to happen either. And one day I was sort of sitting thinking, I really do want to write a lyric for this. And we have a painting by a painter called Johnny G. Matthews at home. And it's of this girl in a yellow dress. She's a fabulous sort of dancing girl. And she's got a hand on the shoulder of one guy, but her eye contact is absolutely with the sax player. And I knew by looking at that I could write it as a story.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And because I mean, you could write a book and you put it out there and people read it.
Yeah.
And you don't know that they're reading it. It's just out there. But
Yeah.
a lyric is
Yeah.
on the radio.
Yeah.
People are playing it. It kind of you're writing, living on in music.
Yeah.
Is that a?
It's very odd because I don't experience people on the whole people reading my book. I don't. I
Well,
can't.
I loved
Yeah,
it.
well, thank you, but I wouldn't be sitting in the room with you
Right,
like
right.
this, going,
I know.
"What page are you
So
on?
what did you like? Hey, wait,
did you
let me see
like?
what happens.
Did you like chapter 2? Whereas with a song, I mean, it's a whole different experience. I mean,
Exactly.
from the most thrilling moment is the moment I burst in here, and David, says, "What is it?" And I say, "I've done the lyric. And then he stops what he's doing, and then he immediately sets up a mic and sings it. And that, I think, is the real high point of writing a lyric. And then after that, you get a bit, of ennui. The first time you hear it on the radio is fantastic.
Right.
And, and at concerts, of course, it's lovely. And actually, at the moment with the band rehearsing, it is wonderful hearing a whole band playing
Play
something
your
that,
words.
yeah. So that it has its moments.
So what is next for you? Are you going to write another book?
I think there might be more lyrics before another book. I can never tell with the books because they just sort of arrive, or the idea for them, and they kind of take me over. So at the moment I'm thinking that David has some more tracks and that I need to start listening to them and maybe just selecting one or two to start doing a few more.
Well, I hope you do. I'm following you on Twitter.
Oh,
I'm going to
great.
keep up to date on what you're doing because I did enjoy the kindness quite a bit. So
it's
I look
so
forward
nice
to
to hear.
another.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure meeting
Oh,
you.
it's very nice
Thank
to meet
you,
you.
Polly.
Always a pleasure to meet someone who's read my book.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.